year, playing with all of the fun tools that I got in order to be able to do this, that I have kept in their packages or closely adjacent to my computer for well over 2 months now, because that's how perfectionism and imposter syndrome roll sometime. Hello, I am Jozie Yort. I am the writer behind Doing Life Divergent, and I am here to welcome you to my new media experience of podcasting and video blogging. I'm a writer at my core, and this is something I've always wanted to do. So, thank you for joining me. I'm going to do just a brief introduction of myself and of the work that I'm hoping to do in this space with and for you. So, again, I'm Jozie Yort. I live in Massachusetts in a rural town with a very small farm, homestead with my family. I have 3 children. I live with my father and my husband and those 3 children. I have alpaca, chickens, cats, a dog, and a bunny. Those are all my people. I am a special education teacher and a education enthusiast, specifically for neurodiverse people. So I'm going to use this podcast this time to talk about exactly that, to talk about all different types of neurodiversity, but really hone in and focus on specifically the neurodiversity of executive function impairment or ADHD. So a little bit of background about that. I was diagnosed at the age of 35 or so as having ADHD. I had been misdiagnosed for most of my life as having depression and anxiety. I do also have a diagnosis of having a mood disorder, but it really wasn't until I got the ADHD diagnosis that I started to piece together the things that had always presented as frustrations and issues in my life and understood them to be part of the way my brain works. And as I became more engaged and more involved with understanding that, it really gave me some tools to hone in on creating behaviors and just giving myself a lot of grace in order to live with these diagnoses. So my family also has several different neurodiversities, and I'm going to talk about all of that as we go on this podcast. So that's me. My educational background is primarily in elementary education, though I do work now as a middle school teacher. I teach in a life skills classroom, but I grew up always working with younger children. And I also have my Montessori certification for what we call the Children's House, which is ages 3 through 6. And I taught in a Montessori school for about 3 years. And then I moved back into a public school. And I have a lot of conflicting feelings about my many roles in education and the way that our education system works and the inequities in our education system. And again, these are things that we will dive much deeper into as this little media podcast gets going. So, with all of that being said, I hope that you will, of course, like, subscribe, do all the things, but really, I'm hoping to engage with you as an audience. You, I am imagining, are my people. You were brought to this podcast, A, because you know me and you probably saw it on my social media, but B, because you also have an interest in this. I'm going to get interrupted. I can hear my children coming home. And so they're part of this show as well. They are definitely going to be featured on the show. and they will most likely be present to have conversations with me as well. I hope that I can pull lots of people in from my audience, from those who are interested in this topic, so that we can have real life conversations about how this topic impacts you in your daily life, whether you are neurodivergent, whether you work with people who are neurodivergent, have family members or loved ones that are neurodivergent, and what those relationships really look like, what the day-to-day experience of life really is when we have these differences in our brain. I will talk a little bit about the science behind some of the differences that manifest as neurodivergent traits. I am not a scientist. I am a teacher by trade. I am a nerd, though. I love science and I love data. I know that's weird. My dad cannot believe that I love data. But we'll bring all of that in my, my unique way. I'm going to pause for 1 second. This is my daughter, Ayla. How old are you, Ayla?
6.
Okay. And what do you have with you?
Tiny axolotls.
Tiny axolotls.
Dab it.
Oh, hold it up here.
Dab it. Dab it.
There you go. And they're little fidgets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
some have keychains.
Oh, so we found these on Amazon, like we find everything. Yeah. And they are cool little wigglies.
In the 3D.
3D, yep. What does 3D mean? Do you know?
It means they stand up.
Right. They're not on paper. They are 3-dimensional. Do you want to say something about yourself?
Yeah.
What do you want to say?
So, I have a sickness, but I don't know if I have it, but it's called asthma.
Oh, okay. Because you were sick recently, right? And you're taking an inhaler?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you doing today? Looks like you were doing art.
I was doing art as my special, and I love art because I get my hands all messy.
Yeah, we love doing art together. All right. Well, thank you. I'm so glad you came and showed me your axolotls. Yep. Which one's your favorite?
I would say these 2 rainbow ones.
Yeah, I like the rainbow ones too. This pink one reminds me of what an axolotl really looks like. All right, so here I am with all 3 of my children. So Ayla introduced herself already. Hold on, you got to stay down there. The table's going to wiggle. All right, David, come. All right, so I already said your name. This is David. How old are you, David?
I'm 8.
Okay.
About to turn 9 in December 14th.
8, about to turn 9. Excellent.
And that is Everett.
And that's Everett. But hold on, I want to ask David, what's awesome about you?
I can climb door frames, and I'm the smartest in my class. And Everett's 12.
So David's the smartest in his class, and he can climb door frames, which I've seen, and it is true.
Yes,
all right.
It is.
Everett, how about you, bud? You got to kind of talk close to this.
My name's Everett. I'm 12, and I'm good at mountain biking.
Nice. And is that what makes you awesome,
David,
that you're good at mountain biking?
You asked the law to them.
All right. So this is the crew, and we have loads of fun, and you'll get to have conversations with them more soon. Okay, I'm pausing. Okay. So thanks for joining me on that brief interlude to meet my children. And now you know who they are, and you know what they feel makes them awesome. You should also know that at least one of them has a diagnosis of ADHD, and we believe the other 2 are just yet to be diagnosed because they're young. But we are pretty certain that this very hereditary trait has been passed down to them. So I'm going to tell a little bit more of the backstory of that to kind of let you know how this came to be my passion. So like I said, I grew up from probably about my early teenage years with incorrect diagnosis. Not that my traits didn't present as depression and anxiety, they did, but I didn't realized that much of that came from the frustrations of what are truly ADHD symptoms and traits. Things like inattentiveness. I definitely was a daydreamer, but I learned how to compensate. I was a great student because I was then a perfectionist, and I am now a recovering perfectionist, which is work every single day. Partially why I did not start this podcast for over 2 months, even though I had gotten all of the equipment and felt really ready. Sometimes my perfectionism causes procrastination because I want everything to be just right. And today I decided, let's just go for it and see what happens. So you're getting raw, unedited. No, that's not true. It will be edited. But you're getting a really raw version of what this is going to be. Hopefully, it'll get better with time. Um, but so, having grown up with some of these traits and been frustrated by them, I started to pursue education in part because I just love that moment. I love working with kids, but I love that moment when learning takes place. And for me, um, I enjoy working with the kids who others would describe as difficult to, make behave, difficult to teach, and just the kids who are different. That's what I enjoyed because I've always known that I was different, and I didn't necessarily have a name for it. I didn't necessarily have an understanding of it, but I did have, and I do have, a lot of empathy and compassion for anyone who is growing up in this very kind of rigid society that is not made for neurodivergent people. So I wanted to create a space as an educator where neurodiversity is celebrated and people who have neurodivergent traits feel good about themselves. That is like the number one important thing in my classroom. I really hope to build students' confidence as well as their ability to understand themselves and others based on what we can learn and what we know about our brains. So I began my career path in really not until a little later in college because I took a non normative journey through my early college years and I transferred a lot. This again, classic ADHD trait of, oh, I'm really interested in this. I'm going to follow it. Oh, that didn't quite work out. I either lost interest or it became too hard or I didn't see where it was going. So I tried out something else or I moved somewhere so that I could have a new life experience. And that caused me to transfer. Gosh, I've lost count. I think at least 4 or 5 times from school to school. And I wound up having a 6-year bachelor's degree journey. And within that, in my last couple of years, I came back to my hometown and I focused in elementary education and had a double major in psychology because that was required to have a double major. And then I also minored in art because my initial educational journey was at art school. More on that later, I'm sure. But then I became a teacher and I actually, got my first job working in an alternative school. I was a middle school teacher for a group of adolescent boys who were, from the inner city. They were rough around the edges. And I was a brand new teacher trying to not just manage the multiple behaviors, but actually teach them something. And of course, they're at all different levels. So that was, right off the bat, throw me in and I will figure it out. Which I felt like I did in some ways, but in other ways, it was a struggle. And I remember in my first year as a teacher in that role, I'd get to the end of every month and say, I don't know, can I do this for another month? And I'd get to the end of the next month and I'd say, all right, maybe I can do this for one more month. And then finally, I got to the end of the school year and I went to my director, who was an amazing director and really somebody who opened my eyes to what special education can and, in my opinion, should be, in that she introduced me to people like Ross Green and Dr. Hallowell and some of their theories around how we all, but especially children, do the best that we can in any given moment with the tools that we have and are equipped with to use. And that philosophy has taken me through my entire career, which is, going on 16 years at this point. But I went to her at the end of the school year and I said, I love you. I love the people in this school. This has been an amazing experience. I just can't do it for another year. Um, and mainly that was because it was a setting where we had to do physical restraints as needed. And I only ever did one full restraint, and it shook my nervous system to a point where I said, I physically can't take this. I might be strong enough, but my nervous system cannot take that energy. Um, so I left and I got a job in a public school as a reading teacher, and I worked in a classroom, in English classroom with seventh grade students. And I loved, the classroom, and I loved the students, but I hated the banter between the teachers about how terrible the students were, how terrible the school and the school district were, and basically how they just hated their jobs. And I was like, listen, that's not for me. I am not going to spend my life hating what I do for the majority of my day. Um, so I left and I started to teach my other love, which is yoga. So I had my own business as an independent contractor and eventually my own small yoga studio. I also became a massage therapist and practiced massage both, first in the yoga studio I worked for, then in my home, I had a little setup, and then I had my own little studio. And it was around the time that I had my first child and my studio at the same time. And I just had to press the pause button because becoming a mother is a crazy adventure, as many of you probably know. Um, and again, it was just one of those times in my life where I realized I had to pivot. So I stopped working pretty much altogether. And when I look back on it now, it's probably something I would never do again, but that is for a whole other slew of reasons that mainly have to do with my own um, emotions and thought patterns around finances. Um, we went into a financial hole when I stopped working, but we gained such a rich experience of getting to know our first child and supporting him in his traits that started to come up as he was growing into a 2 and a 3 and a 4-year old. But it was around that time that he was 3.5, 4 years old. And I was in this beautiful co-op experience with some of my friends who also had children the same age, where we would basically take turns leading the group of these tiny humans, five or six 3-year-olds. We'd pair up, and two of us would take them for the morning and do different adventures, and the other ones would get a break and go do what they needed to do. So I was planning on homeschooling. I was loving this whole lifestyle and figured if we can make it work financially, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then my oldest son, Everett, told me in his little 3-year-old way, Mom, I don't want to learn from you. I don't want to do your learning activities. I just want to play. And I said, oh, okay. And at that time, I had been studying a lot of different, alternative education methods. And I got into Montessori, I got into Waldorf, I got into unschooling. And I was doing so much research and so much reading about all of those philosophies. And I really felt like that was where my heart was. That was how I felt education should be. It should be this natural process where it's very much child directed and centered, and teacher is really a guide, helping children to kind of explore their natural curiosities and learn about their world. And it still is very much a part of my philosophy. However, of course, as we grow, we learn new things and we adapt and we integrate all of the things that we've learned, and we come to where we're at any given moment. And I am by no means complete in my trajectory of learning and growth. Um, in fact, many of my friends know me as somebody who is going to continue learning and probably taking classes and probably doing more degrees for the rest of my life, because I just love it that much. But around that time, when my son turned 3 or 4, I found a job as an after-school program staff at a Montessori school near us. And it just took off from there. I just loved the school and I loved the method. I spent time in the classrooms, and I started to do a training program. And I got most of the way through the program, and then I got pregnant again. And I stopped the program because I just wasn't feeling well. It was, every Saturday, driving in to the Boston area and spending hours there and all of that. So again, I became, a stay-at-home parent with 2 children now. We continued the co-op situation for a while longer. And when my second child, David, was about 6 months old, and I realized that, homeschooling was not going to be our thing, I dove all in back into Montessori, and I completed the training program, which I have to tell you guys, it's one of those things that, again, right, these frustrations in life that I've hit have been that I have so many things that I want to do and learn about. And so I've kind of, jumped around according to what my interest is. But I did that certification program, and it was like doing a master's degree in terms of the level of learning and work and just deep, deep concentration in a subject area. But I got 0 graduate credits for it. So that's that, and we know that in the public school system, those graduate credits equal higher pay. So that's just also a life lesson for me. But I worked in the Montessori school after getting that certification, and I led a classroom that was beautiful, a little log cabin, and had just kind of the most wonderful experience. Just being present with children ages 3 to 6, and present with their parents and helping them to understand, the behaviors, the learning, all of the things that children of that age present. And for many, if you're a new parent, you don't know what the developmental stages are for those kids. You're kind of learning as you go. And so it felt great to be not just an educator of students, but really a parent educator as well. And I've always loved working with adults in terms of education as well. That was, primarily who I taught when I was a yoga teacher. Although I also did a lot of programming for schools and for, professional development for teachers in schools. But then I got pregnant for the 3rd time, and, a Montessori school is a private school, and my salary was pretty much at the top of what it was ever going to be. And having a 3rd child meant more expenses. And then, we moved out to this rural area, and again, life just took another turn. And I decided, okay, I'm going to look for a job in the public schools now. And that was when I really fell into special education, because I applied for a job that was, again, a reading teacher position, primarily working with Title I students who are kind of at a tier 2 level and just need a little bit of extra support to, help their learning progress to grade level. So that was the job I applied for. But the district needed a special educator in the school that I was applying to. And so they sent me over to the principal of that school. And I remember getting the phone call of like, hey, we thought you were great. We'd love to hire you, but would you be interested in this position that we have open? And I was like, oh, I would love that. I'm so interested in that. I'm not certified in that yet. But of course I can get certified. I can do that. I can, once again, begin a new learning journey. So that's what I did. I had an 8-week-old. I got the job before I actually gave birth, I think. No, it was after. But literally she was 8 weeks old and I started work, and it was around this time. This is kind of my my anniversary of working in a public school again. Uh, so yeah, I went all in. And I have to point out, she was born in the year of 2019. So I started working in this public school and loved it, was learning a lot. And then, bam, March 13th, 2020, COVID strikes and everything changes. And if you were an educator in the time of COVID, I'm sure that you have deep, visceral rememberings and experiences from that time, because our world got turned upside down, as it did for everybody. But we went from being teachers in a classroom with 20 kids to being teachers on a screen with 20 kids. And that's just a game changer. So I was still primarily teaching small groups. More than half of my kids didn't show up. And then, it was my role to kind of track them down, essentially, which was very strange. And in the meantime, I had 3 little kids. My oldest was in first grade. I had 3 little kids at home. And my husband and I are both educators. So we were spending our time during the day trying to connect and trying to teach these kids who are also home. Meanwhile, our 3 children are becoming feral in our backyard. Not the baby. She was 6 months old. And so she spent most of the time in my lap, kind of down underneath the camera. Sometimes she'd poke a little hand up or her face. And that was 2020. And in the midst of that, as we progressed into the fall, I continued and I got my post back in special education. I got my licensure. And then I decided I wanted to be a school administrator. I'm just going to pause and kind of let that land for myself for a little bit, because that was 5 years ago at this point, basically, that I made that decision. I completed my master's degree in educational leadership. I worked for a couple of years just recently as a coach and instructional coach focused on inclusion. And it was a wonderful experience, a difficult experience, and it really opened my eyes to the realities of being an administrator. And this is, public school admin, and the challenges that come with that, and uh, the time that comes with that, and energy. And it was actually kind of by chance, I wound up back in the classroom because we were having a really hard time filling the position that I had been in prior, which was a life skills teacher. And so, there came a day where we hadn't had a teacher for about 2 months, and I talked to our director, who I, very good friends with, and said, well, what do you want me to do? I don't want to watch this classroom and these students crumble. And also, I do love the work that I'm doing right now. But ultimately, a classroom like that needs a teacher, and it was a classroom that I loved being the teacher of. So I went back into the classroom, and that's where I am now. So all of that to say, that is my more detailed background and how I came to be so passionate about special education. And the one last thing that I want to say, because I really do want to keep these episodes fairly short because attention span. But the last thing that I want to say is that in my coaching role, the best thing that I did, I loved working with the teacher. I loved doing professional development, having really great conversations about very small changes that could be made to curriculum or to even just the formatting of a document that could support students in being able to access the material, their education, show what they understand, their knowledge. I loved all of that. But the thing I loved the most was a program that I ran called Back on Track. And it was for students who just needed somebody to be their champion, needed somebody to stay on them about assignments and missing work, and you need to go meet with this teacher, and you need to study for that test, and you need to make up this quiz. And I had a kind of unruly, to be honest, because those are the kids that I love, unruly group of students who just, that's what they needed. And the program grew, and, it wasn't perfect by any means. It needed a lot of refinement, and needed, really, those students needed more of a wraparound approach, which we were starting to develop. But it really just cemented for me that this is my place in the world. These are the people that I'm meant to serve, that I am called to serve again and again. And I get a little emotional about it because I have always wanted my work to have purpose. It's really, really important to me in my life that I feel like I am impacting my community for good. So I'm going to wrap this up by saying it is such a privilege to work every day with students and adults who are embracing the many beautiful brains that make us as a race, as a human race, so amazing. So I'm always going to end whenever I have these podcasts or video casts, if I have guests, by asking them the question that I asked my children, which is, what makes you amazing? What is it that makes you feel confident, that makes you feel special, unique, that that you do well, even if you don't do it perfectly, especially if you don't do it perfectly and you still are drawn to it? What is it that makes you amazing? I can't wait to find out. I can't wait to have conversations with you. If you would like to come on and have a conversation with me and you're okay with it being broadcast, I know a lot of people don't feel comfortable with that, but I would love to have you. And I would love to just continue this work and this conversation about neurodiversity and all of the many, many ways in which our life is impacted by it, and in which it shows up, and in which we can show up authentically, unafraid, unashamed of it, and just live our best lives. Live a life that we want for ourselves, our children, our future generations, making a more inclusive world. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you next time.